Hi everyone. Let me go ahead and start off by saying that I have a sore throat, so I may be clearing my throat from time to time. But I just wanted to share with you some stories while I'm at my parents' house from a book that I used to like to read. And also I found this in their den area. We have this Humpty Dumpty. He's very cute, so I thought he could accompany us. So, I'm not quite sure what story I want to read, so I will go ahead and pick that out. Okay, I always like this one, so let's read it. It's called The Shoemaker and the Elves. This one is adapted from a German fairy tale by the Brothers Grimm. There was once a shoemaker who worked very hard, but was also very poor. At last, all he had was just enough leather to make one pair of shoes. He cut out the shoes in the evening so that he could set to work on them the next morning. Then he went to bed and, leaving all his cares to heaven, fell asleep. In the morning he went down to work, found the pair of shoes made and finished, and standing on his table. He was very much astonished and did not know what to think. After a moment, the poor man took the shoes in his hand to look at them more closely. They were beautifully made. Every stitch was in its right place, just as if they had come from the hand of a master workman. Soon after, a buyer came in. The shoes fitted him very well, so he gave more than the usual price for them. Now the shoemaker had enough money to buy leather for 2 pairs of shoes. He cut out the shoes that night, intending to set to work the next morning. But that was not to be. When he got up in the morning, the 2 pairs of shoes were already finished. A customer paid him so much money for these shoes that he was able to buy leather enough for 4 new pairs. Early the next morning he found the 4 pairs finished, and so it always happened. Whenever he cut out in the evening was worked up by the morning. He was soon making a good living, and in the end became very well-to-do. One night, not long before Christmas, when the shoemaker had finished cutting out shoes, and before he went to bed, he said to his wife, "How would it be if we were to sit up tonight and see who it is that makes the shoes?" His wife agreed and left a light burning. They both hid behind a curtain in a corner of the room and watched to see what would happen. As soon as it was midnight, 2 naked little elves came in and seated themselves at the shoemaker's table. They began to stitch, to pierce, and to hammer so cleverly and quickly with their little fingers that the shoemaker's eyes could scarcely follow them. They did not stop until everything was finished and ready on the table. Then they jumped up and disappeared quickly as they had come. The next morning, the shoemaker's wife said to her husband, "Those little men have made us rich. We ought to show our thanks. With all their running about and having nothing to cover them, they must be very cold. I'll tell you what, I will make little shirts, coats, waistcoats, and breeches for them, and knit each of them a pair of stockings, and you shall make each of them a little pair of shoes." The thought pleased the good man very much. One night, when everything was finished, instead of the cut-out work, they laid the gifts on the table. Then they hid themselves so that they could see what the elves would do. When midnight came, the elves rushed in, ready to set to work, but when they found the neat little garments instead of cut-out leather, they stood a moment in surprise. Then they showed the greatest delight. Swiftly they took up the clothes and slipped them on, singing, "What spruce and dandy boys are we, no longer cobblers we will be." And then they hopped and skipped and leaped over chairs and benches. At last they danced out the door and into the night. The shoemaker never saw them again, but from that time on everything went well with the shoemaker as long as he lived. So these little stories are just the perfect length for children before they go to bed. So now I'm going to read this one, which is called Lazy Jack. Once upon a time, there was a boy named Jack. He lived with his mother in a small house in a small village. Jack and his mother were very poor. What little money they had, the old woman earned by spinning wool into thread. But Jack did nothing, for he was very lazy. In summer, he sat all day in the shade of a huge tree. In winter, he sat all day by the fire. His mother could not get him to do anything to help her. Finally, the old woman had had enough. "You lazy boy," she shouted. "If you do not go to work for your porridge, I will turn you out of the house." Frightened by his mother's threat, Jack thought he had best go to work if he wanted to eat. The very next day, he went out and hired himself to a neighboring farmer for a penny. After he got his penny, Jack was very pleased. He had never had any money before, and as he walked home, he kept tossing the penny into the air and catching it. But as he crossed a bridge, Jack dropped his penny. He watched in dismay as it rolled off the bridge and into the river below. When his mother learned what had happened, she was very angry. "You stupid boy," she said. "You should put the penny in your pocket." "I'll do so the next time," Jack said. The next day Jack went out and hired himself to a cow herd. This man gave Jack a jar of milk for his day's work. Remembering what his mother had said, Jack put the jar of milk into the large pocket of his jacket. Long before he got home, all the milk had spilled out. "Dear me, you foolish boy," his mother said. "You should have carried the jar of milk in your hand." "I'll do so the next time," Jack replied. The next day, Jack again hired himself to a farmer. The farmer agreed to give Jack a cream cheese for his work. In the evening, Jack took the cheese. Remembering what his mother had said, Jack put the cheese on his head and started home. But by the time he got home, most of the cheese had melted and run into his hair. "You stupid lout," his mother shouted. "You should have carried the cheese very carefully in your hands." "I'll do so the next time," replied Jack. The following day, Jack went out and hired himself to a baker. When Jack had finished work, the baker gave him a large tomcat. Remembering what his mother had said, Jack carried the cat very carefully in his hands. But in a short time, the cat had scratched him so much he had to let it go. When he got home, his mother said to him, "You silly boy, you should have tied a string to the cat and dragged it along after you." "I'll do so the next time," replied Jack. The next day, Jack hired himself to a butcher. This good man paid Jack with a leg of lamb. Remembering what his mother had said, Jack tied a string to the leg of lamb and dragged it through the dirt after him. By the time Jack reached home, the meat was spoiled. This time, Jack's mother was out of patience with him. The next day was Sunday, and now they would have nothing but boiled cabbage for their Sunday dinner. "You ninny hammer," she cried. "You should have carried the leg of lamb on your shoulder." "I'll do so next time," replied Jack. Well, on Monday, lazy Jack went out once more to look for work. This time he hired himself to a cattle keeper. At the end of the day, a man gave Jack a donkey. Remembering what his mother had said, Jack hoisted the donkey onto his shoulders. Although he was very strong, Jack had difficulty doing this. At last, however, he got the donkey up on his shoulders and started home. Now it happened that on his way home, Jack had to pass the house of a very rich man. This man had only one daughter, who was very beautiful. Unfortunately, she could not speak or hear, and she had never laughed in her life. The doctors had told her father that she would never speak or hear until someone made her laugh. Many people tried, but without success. At last, despairing of all hope, her father offered to give her in marriage to the first man who could make her laugh. Many people tried, but without success. Now it happened that the young lady was looking out of the window as Jack struggled along with the donkey on his shoulders. The poor beast, and its legs sticking up in the air, was kicking violently and hee-hawing with all its might. Well, the sight was so funny, the young lady burst into laughter. Instantly she recovered her speech and her hearing. Her father was overjoyed. He kept his promise and gave her to Jack in marriage. He also made Jack a rich man. After Jack and the girl were married, they went to live in a large house, and Jack's mother lived with them in great happiness for the rest of her life. So, that's kind of a silly story, but I always liked them when I was little, and you can pretty much just pick from anything on here. There's just so many, and they have really beautiful pictures. But anyways, I hope you guys like this. I'm going to try in the morning to finally make a video of when I first wake up. And it'll probably be easier to just read something like this, like I did today, rather than just try to talk. And I warn you, it's very, very raspy and rough, so hopefully someone will find it relaxing. Anyways, I hope you guys have a good day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.